So one of the most controversial things we ever talk about here on our channel at Churchfront is drums. Acoustic, electric, cage drummers, cage-free, microphones, electronic. It all adds up to being a really hot topic that you guys seem to like to talk about a lot. In fact, this one short video that we posted on both our Instagram and TikTok,
believe it or not, this is not an acoustic drum kit.
in just those two platforms has well over 1 million views, where we talk about the EFNOTE Pro 700 series drum kit. One of the biggest comments on that drum kit is how expensive it is. And hey, I get it. $7,000+ for a drum kit is a lot of money. We think that if you compare that with a really premium acoustic drum kit, meaning drums, good shells from a company like DW or maybe a Yamaha studio kit, microphones, a drum cage, by the time you add in all of the hardware, you're gonna be really close to the same, if not quite a bit more, especially if you go with a high-end enclosure. But maybe you're thinking, Matt, we don't have the budget for premium. What are some other options? Well, today in this video, I'm gonna have my drummer from my church for the very first time test out the EFNOTE Pro 500 drum kit. This drum kit retails for about $2,000 less than the 700 series, and you get a lot of the same awesome features. The main difference between the 700 series and the 500 series is just the size of the shells and the number of pads and triggers you get with that kit. If you really just need the basics in an electronic kit, this kit is for you. It comes with 2 toms, snare drum, ride, cymbal, hi-hat, just the basics to get you what you need for a great sounding drum kit. So without any further ado, let's go over to Studio A, where I've got the EFNOTE Pro 500 drum set set up and ready for him to try out. All right, Rob, you've played the EFNOTE Pro 500 series kit now at our church. What version of the Roland V drums do we play at our church?
We play the Roland TD-30. Unfortunately, we got it right before the TD-50 came out, but at the time it was the flagship.
Let's start with playability.
Truly, this is the most playable electronic kit that I have encountered. I do like the mesh heads are what they are. I have found that the mesh heads just eat up a drumstick, both physically and in playing. So I always like to tighten them. I mean, really tighten the heads. And these reacted pretty well to that. And I think most heads going to react pretty well to being tightened. But on our Rolands particularly, I'm tightening them all the time. And they still don't get that kind of attack that you're used to from a plastic head. Or the rebound that you get on a plastic head. So as far as mesh heads are concerned, they are what they are. These are probably the best that I've had, but there's not a big difference between the best and the worst. Playability of the bass drum is nice. I think a lot of that comes down to your pedal and your hardware selection. You know, it's a little small. I play a heavy foot there, so it was moving around on me a lot. I mean, it moved probably 3 inches, and I think it has to do with its size. It's a small bass drum. So if you're playing in a small house of worship or a jazz club or something, it might be really nice for space. But again, it's an electronic kit. I could turn it into a 24-inch, bass drum that booms like crazy, and it doesn't have to be small or big. So playability-wise, if you're struggling for space, I get it. But playability of this particular drum, I wish it was a little bit bigger. It had some more substantiability to it because it wouldn't move as much. Cymbals, I would put up there. I've played metal cymbals with the holes drilled in them. I've played Roland cymbals, played a couple of brands of cymbals out there, and I will tell you that I think these are probably the highest quality electronic cymbals I've played. Just speaking to playability, they have great rebound, which you're not going to get that out of a cymbal because it's not made of rubber; it's made of bronze, and it's got a certain feel to it. But playability on the cymbals is nice because it gives you a lot of the feel that you're getting. You can play around the cymbal, you can play on the bell, you can play on the edge, you can You can crash it on a flat stick. You can crash it on the edge. And what's nice about it is it actually reacts to those different ways you're playing it. Since the F-Note doesn't really come with a hi-hat stand, it comes down to having a quality hi-hat stand. If you just played it on a kind of a single braced, kind of entry-level hi-hat stand, you wouldn't get the playability out of this set of hats. And what, again, it goes back to the cymbals. It's got edge ability, and you can hit it flat on the cymbal. You can even play the dome, which a lot of guys don't play a lot of hi-hat dome, but I mean, I do every now and then, and it actually played, which is a first for me. I've never had a hi-hat stand or a hi-hat set of hats play the bell. It's just not a trigger that they end up putting on there. The rims I actually really like. I'm used to playing the Rolands, which use a metal rim with a plastic or a rubber cover on it. And it's a standard, triple bezel or whatever they call it, hoop. And then they put this rubber thing on the outside. What's nice about this is it seems to be a smaller rim, like a little bit smaller rim, but there's a lot more rubber on the edge of the rim. Over time, I'm sure this is going to eat up, and I imagine F-Note probably sells replacement hoop covers. But what's nice about them is I don't hear, even with the Roland, even through quality in-ears with, multiple drivers, when I play a rim shot on the Roland kit, I still hear the big hoop clunk through the rubber. I didn't hear that on this. So I think playability-wise, it's not going to throw you off guard and what's that in my ear, that type of thing.
What did you like about the sounds they offer? What did you end up landing on for your favorite drum sounds at the end there?
So the sounds are pretty nice. I mean, again, I think this goes to electronics just advancing through the years. I can't imagine that they're going to get worse. That's just not going to happen. So yeah, I've played full time. I've played 2 different kits for a total of probably 20 years now. And the Roland, I've played the Yamaha. The Yamaha DTX at the time was like the Mac Daddy. Roland was out there, but if you wanted to spend like $2,000 and not $4,000, you were getting the Yamaha, and the Yamaha kit was nice. I actually found a lot of the Yamaha sounds to be better than the Roland, and this eclipses that. It's actually really eclipsed that, and I think it just comes to the sampling that they've now done. They can just model that sound so much better with your samples. As far as what's built in, I think that the kits that it comes with is really nice. I think that obviously as they go over time, it's a software thing. They can just release you new samples, which is really nice. What I arrived on actually was like a mix. It seems like there's preloaded kits in here. They're obviously playing off of some of the well-known manufacturers. And I play a Pearl kit. I own Pearl kits. I've always owned Pearl kits. I've played on Tama. I played on, every brand. And I don't know what it is about Pearl. I just kind of still drawn to Pearl. And so I immediately went to the Pearl kits in here. But I settled on Birch Kick. I think I settled on a maple snare drum. I usually play a deep snare drum. I want a real big, I want a fat sound. I want a fat attack. And I want a fair amount of resonation to it. And so not a lot of muffling. I settled on this NC Maple. It's a 14x5, which I'm surprised because that's about what this drum measures. And to me, that's a small snare drum. It's not like a 3-inch or a 4-inch like piccolo snare, but I would play a 6 or a 7-inch depth drum if it were on my real kit. The toms, I ended up with the Slingerland vintage stuff. I like a coated head if I'm playing a real kit, and that sounded, it really was true to feel and true to sound. It sounded like a vintage kit. Again, you can change the tones and things like that. I didn't have to mess with that much at all. The cymbals, I always play Zildjian. I'm sure Sabian's top end line is probably no different than Zildjian. I always remember Pasty being, Neil Peart's, signature line, and I thought that was cool because he offered him in black, but never really played him seriously. So I immediately kind of went towards the Zildjian, clearly the Zildjian brands in here, and and I ended up on Zildjian stuff. I ended up on a Zildjian beat hat. I'm guessing that I have a quick beat hat. Quick beat hat is a standard shaped cymbal top. The bottom is a flat. There's no dome, and it does something to the sound. It gets the sound out of there quickly. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly the hat that I picked, the exact hat that I play with on my personal kit. I play a K-Dark ride, and I actually fell right in love with the Zildjian, the ZD Dark Ride 22. And then the splash or the crash cymbal actually ended up on a Sabian, which is odd, but sounded really great. As far as the sounds coming out of them, sometimes when you play an electronic kit, you know, it's a simple sample that's just tap, 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 tap. There's no playability to that, and there's no variability to that, especially the cymbals, because they are such a long tone. What I really like about the cymbal sounds is I can play, and then the second hit actually registers in a little bit louder velocity than the first hit, because you're stacking those resonance on the cymbal like you would a real cymbal. And that's one of the things you lose with an electronic set of cymbals is a lot of times it's literally you're just hitting a play button when you play the stick. So you hit play and then you hit it again, you hit play again. There's no difference between play number 1 and play number 2. And so with these, what they've done with the sounds is really changed, and it goes along with playability, but they've really changed the sounds to give you this real deep set of sounds that you can pull from. And then, of course, your playing changes those sounds. I thought that was amazing. I go back to the hi-hat, being able to play the bell. That's pretty cool. And it sounds like a hi-hat bell. Hi-hat bell is usually you're going to run that a little tighter than a normal cymbal would be. You're going to have your nut on the top of that. You're going to use some felt. A lot of times, I used to play with no nut and no felt because I wanted it to ring out. Well, when you're playing a hi-hat, you're usually going to tighten that thing down. You tighten the clutch down, and you get that tink, tink, tink sound, but no resonance. And they have replicated it very well with the hi-hat. I think that's amazing, actually, because it still had variable sounds within that.
So where do you rank this in the world of electric versus acoustic? Would you prefer this over an acoustic in some situations? Would you always prefer an acoustic? Where do you sit in that kind of?
Growing up in the time I did, I'm still really partial to acoustic drums. Would I ever want to play electric drums if somebody said, you can play any kit you want, don't worry about the sound, don't worry about how much they cost, don't worry about what anybody's going to say if you're too loud. What kit are you going to play? It's acoustic drums. You can't replicate that, you know. You could get very close, but the whole package you can't absolutely replicate. Now, that said, you know, as a Christian, as a guy who wants to do what's right for a church body, do what's right for, the people in the back, you know, that maybe were born before you were, and don't want to hear the loud, clangy drums all day, and wants to respect that opinion because, you know, at the end of the day, they're showing up every week, they're tithing, they're respectful people, they're at all your dinners, they're a great member of the church, and they just don't like the drums like you do. Being respectful of all that, I'd put this particular kit, and maybe it's EFNOTE's technology, I'd put this particular kit right up there at the top. At our particular church, I think this would be a fine alternative to what we have. I mean, it would definitely be an upgrade to what we have now. We have an older kit. It's electronic. If you're talking about house of worship, purely house of worship, you got to talk about the budget. You got to talk about the older people in the back row, and you got to talk about all of that. I think this is a really great option for it. And from what I understand, budget-wise, it's a really good option as well, because most of the top of the line kits from what I see in are easily 7, 8, 9, 10 grand. And you got to count in your hardware. You know, you're going to spend $600-800, I think, on a good drum pedal. I think that's the other thing. You get a good set of hardware and you don't end up having to buy it a lot. So maybe $600-800 on a pedal. Maybe they're more nowadays. But that said, you know, you're 5-6 grand all in on this kit. It's not like some of the other ones out there where you still have to buy a computer to run it. I think it's a really, really great option for churches that are trying to be budget conscious and sound conscious, but also drummer conscious. I think this is a good mix because from what I felt on the Brain, you can mix up here. Going back and forth with you, I don't think it affected the gain too much. Again, that's part of your in-ears that you'd be able to control if you had an in-ear monitor setup. But I think, yeah, in synopsis, if you're not going to be somewhere that you can play acoustic all the time, I think the electronic kit, this is about as good as you're gonna get in 2025.
So there you have it, an honest opinion from a drummer about the EFNOTE Pro 500 drum kit. If you want to buy the actual drum kit that Rob tested today in our studio, you can actually go over to our website and you can find that as well, and we'll put the link in the description of this video. Obviously, there's only one of those kits, so first come, first serve, guys. If this video helped you in any way decide what drum kit you're getting for your ministry, we would love to hear about it. Make sure to comment below, like this video, subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and we will see you in the next video.